Hey everyone, you're watching Ash on Comics. I'm Ash, and here's EVS's live stream. What's going on? Well, I don't need to shout out EVS as a YouTuber. This guy is about as popular as it gets in the comic book, Comicsgate realm. Maybe slightly still behind Diversity in Comics. The reason it's up here is just I have something to show because you don't want to see my ugly mug. And I was listening to this live stream, and you can just see still going on. I just stopped it because they're going on subjects that I don't care about. And I don't listen to his stuff very often, but I was in the car and I just kind of wanted to hear some talk radio style. I just like having chat going on, so I popped it on to listen to, and they were talking about something that went on recently with Nurkish and Cecil. And that the Cash Grab comic is canceled, and it has to do with Timothy Lim. And I'm like, I caught into it a little bit late. I'm still not 100% sure like what is going on. From the gist, it sounds like EVS said something on Nurkish's, not his chat, his Discord or something, and Nurkish maybe got a little bit out of shape. Something happened with Timothy Lim, who was doing the comic, who's kind of always had an issue with EVS, in my opinion, going back to when EVS made a comment that, politics and comics and so forth, and that's not real comics. And then, Timothy Lim, who does things like Trump's Space Force, coming out, and he did My Hero Macadamia, kind of took a slight to that. And it just got me thinking, man, I just wanted to put my thoughts on it, and I can't do it in a tweet, and so I just thought, I'm gonna put my camera up, start recording, and get my thoughts out there, and see what other people think based on my comments, because I think there's a lot of misconception going on about Comicsgate, and this is what the heart of it all is. Nurkish is shouting, I'm not Comicsgate, never been Comicsgate. I think Timothy Lim has the same attitude, and there's this whole I'm Comicsgate, you're not Comicsgate. There's influencers and gatekeepers and blah 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 blah, and some things need to be clarified, okay? And the people who have motive, like EVS, is a good guy, I like him, but he's not the right person to clarify it because he's got his own agenda, and people with agenda, you don't want to hear their side per se. I mean, it's always good to hear everyone's side, but the third party is usually the best to go. And I've been involved in Comicsgate for about a year. I wasn't around at the beginning. I'm no Captain Cummings. I'm no Captain Frugal. But I've been around for about a year. Started off just really vocal on Twitter. Then I started up my YouTube account in about June or July. And it's still minuscule. I'm no big fish or anything. But I do have a good sense of what's going on and what it's all about. And the first thing I want to do is remind everyone that Comicsgate is not a group. In fact, I post on Twitter regularly every Monday, and I got to do that today. I'm going to do that right after this video. Reminder to everyone what Comicsgate is about, because the SJWs continually lie about what it is. Comicsgate is about taking the proselytization and the propaganda out of mainstream comics and just giving us good stories. Okay? And I want to emphasize mainstream comics. I'm going to come back to that later. Second thing it's about is comics professionals, artists, writers, and staff at publishing houses acting professional to the fans, because the fans are customers. Whether or not you buy books or do not buy books, you're a customer, because you're always a prospective customer, and the people who don't buy should be treated just as well as the people who do buy, because those are the people whose business you can earn. The people whose business you already have are important because you want to keep their business. But if you want to make more money, you want to get the people whose business you don't have. And that's super important to remember about people who don't buy books. I see a lot of people always saying, oh, well, you don't buy books, like as if, what? Yeah, and so, don't you want them to buy books? Not if you're Kelly Sue DeConnick. So, that's what I like to remind every Monday, because it's always lied about. Here they're talking about Mark Zaid. This is why I stopped talking. This is nonsense. So this whole legal thing about Mark Zaid. Maybe I'll say something at the end. So Comicsgate is also not a group. It's another thing to me is important. Comicsgate started by the opposing side, we'll call them the comics pros, labeling people who criticize them as Comicsgate. So what happened was, just a long story short, back in the beginning of this whole thing, comics fans were being critical of ultra-leftism being portrayed in comic books. And they didn't like it, so they got real vocal. In response to that vocal attitude, the ultra-leftists in comics didn't say, hey, thanks for your feedback, we'll take that in consideration, we'll try to keep doing business to earn your money. Or something minor as that, that's like the least amount of professionalism. No, they came back and were just like, well, you're just a bunch of bigots and Nazis and we don't want your money. So this is how Comicsgate was formed. Almost. Those people then got even more pissed off and said, how dare you? We're buying your books. We don't like what you're doing. We're giving you feedback. And then your response is to insult us and be vulgar? Screw you. And then it got real hostile. And in which case, the comic book professionals came back and said, well, you're just a bunch of Comicsgate. You're just like Gamergate. Tried to lump everyone into a bucket so they could be demonized, so they could be dismissed. Because it's a super common tactic. It's actually, it's not even common. It's universal. I mean, they always do it without fail. Demonize you so that it's okay to belittle you, make fun of you, mock you, insult you, do whatever they do. It's okay to not be civil to you because now since you've become a Nazi, it's okay to punch you. See, they can't do it when it's just normal human society and polite society. But if you make you a monster, then it's okay to do things that it would not be okay to do to normal people because you're no longer a normal person. And that's what they like to do. And that's what they did. And that's where Comicsgate started. But rather than Comicsgaters saying, oh, screw you, we're not this, and trying to throw off this label, they embraced it and said, hell yeah, we're Comicsgate, and you guys are a bunch of assholes. And they stood on their high ground, which they knew they were right, and they are right. We are right. I'm a part of this. It's not right. Professionals shouldn't be treating customers this way. And they shouldn't be proselytizing in mainstream comics. But Comicsgate is not a group. It's a label put on people that the pros essentially decided. Later on, people voluntarily just lumped themselves in. Like, I didn't need for a pro to call me a Comicsgater when I joined. I just said, you know what? These guys, yeah, I identify with them. I'm a Comicsgater too. And so people started voluntarily taking the title later, and that's pretty much how it is now. But it's just anyone. There's no organization. It's just you're a Comicsgater. It's like being a conservative. It's not a group. Or being a liberal. That's not a group either. It's just something you identify with and you support those ideas. And because it's not a group, there's no leader. Okay? Diversity in Comics has done probably the most to unify Comicsgaters and get them all together under the same roof and kind of focusing on the same ideas. And he is pretty much the author of what I state every Monday and reminding what Comicsgate is about. I take from him because Comicsgate, not being a group, doesn't actually have an official motto or anything like that. But I've been able to boil it down from all the most vocal people of Comicsgate. What's the most unifying part that everyone can agree on? They may have other things that they want too, but no one thinks in Comicsgate that there's no Comicsgaters that are like, no, I think it's okay to not be professional. Like everyone. So this is the most boiled down part. And you're free to have your own things on top of that. You're an individual. Like I said, I'm not defining Comicsgate to what you need to be about. I'm just saying the idea in general, what makes someone Comicsgate. And also to counter the lies because the left, the pros will tell you that Comicsgate is about being bigoted and hate and all that, and that's not the case. Because there's no leader, you can't be kicked out. Okay, so when I see online, this is what I hate when I see all the time, like, oh, so and so, they said I wasn't part of Comicsgate, they kicked me out. John Delarose has been going around doing this whole thing because he got in this big tiff with War Campaign, which is this little subgroup within Comicsgate people, and by his words, he got burned by them, and they don't like him because they think he's alt-right and blah, 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 blah. Who cares? But they can't kick him out, and he can't be kicked. No one can kick anyone out. And this all goes back to starting where I was talking about at the beginning with Nurkish and Cecil or whatever. Apparently there's some tiff that's going on with EVS now that EVS said that Nurkish or someone's on Comicsgate. It's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. That EVS does not have a say in this. He's not a leader. He can give his opinions, and he admits that this is my opinions. That's fine. But just because he's a big... Anyways. Because Comicsgate is made up of different people, like EVS and me, we're going to have different ideas, right? About what it should be. But that's kind of wrong. It's not wrong think. I discourage that kind of thinking because then it's trying to define. And you'll say, well, Ash, you're doing the same thing, right? And it's like, well, no, what I'm trying to do is I've boiled down what everyone who's part of Comicsgate, the unifying things. I have a list of all these things that could be Comicsgate, and I go listen to all the vocal people, and I say, okay, does everyone 100% unanimously agree with this topic? No? Check off. This one, no? Off. Cross it out. And this one, no? Cross it off. This one, yes? Okay. This one, no. And there's really left down with just two things. And it's what I mentioned at the beginning. And so my definition of Comicsgate isn't like an official mantra. It's a reminder. It's a reminder to everyone who has been labeled Comicsgate, who's voluntarily picked up the flag of Comicsgate, that this is the heart of it. And so you got to remember that there's going to be different people that will be, well, I'm this and I'm against this. Like EVS doesn't want politics in comics. Period. Which is, I guess, part of this tiff that Timothy Lim had with him or something or other. But I'm okay with politics in comics. We're both Comicsgate. You see what I'm saying? Like, so you got to be okay with people having their own ideas, and they're not defining you because they're Comicsgate and you're Comicsgate, but they have a different idea, so therefore you're attaching your identity to a cause, and that's collectivism, and don't do that. Be an individual and respect other people being individuals. Another thing, since I have EVS up here, talking about him not being Comicsgate is not the pros, right? So one thing I listened to him on his live stream, he was talking about how Comicsgate has kind of changed over time from what it was to what it is today and so forth. And he's not off the mark. One thing that Comicsgate isn't, and I think this is a huge misunderstanding and a lot of people disagreeing on, is this group of pros that have come in since the Indiegogo scene blew up with Diversity in Comics and EVS shattering records sequentially, and then all these other pros or would-be pros are like, whoa, I want to do that too, and like kind of jumping on the scene. And for a short time there was this whole cash grab controversy that everyone's like, oh, these people are just trying to cash grab on Comicsgate and da-da-da-da. And these pros, which EVS constantly has on his streams, they're not Comicsgate. Okay? They're not. Comicsgate is about fandom. These pros can do whatever the hell they want with their comics, but their comic is appreciated or not appreciated by the fan. And if you're a Comicsgater, you can like their comic or you can hate their comic. It doesn't matter. Now, these guys are appealing to Comicsgaters That's fine. You can call them that. They're Comicsgate friendly. You can call them that. You can call them Comicsgate supporters as pros. And even as fans themselves, like Diversity in Comics started off as a fan. Now, in every sense of the word, he's a pro. Can be Comicsgaters. But as a pro, their books themselves aren't Comicsgate. Comicsgate comics do not exist. They can't. That would require there to be a leader of Comicsgate. There'd have to be an official idea of Comicsgate. And it's not about the comics anyway. Comicsgate is an idea of what comics shouldn't be, not what comics should be. If that makes sense. The fans ultimately decide, hey, is this book cool or is this book not cool? Right? Am I okay with, my Comicsgate mentality? Am I liking this book about a cybernetic frog? Yes, no. Okay, fine. If you don't like it, okay, fine. That's up to you. But just because EVS, who supports Comicsgate, makes a book doesn't make it a Comicsgate book. And any of these guys are just as capable of writing a book that offends your what's the word? Sentimentalities. They can do it. I'm not saying they're gonna, but they're just comics creators, just like the ones that we all have a problem with. It's not about the book. They don't define what Comicsgate is. You define what it is for you. And you can read the book and you read it on its own merits. Earlier I said politics were okay. What? I thought Comicsgate was against politics in comics. Well, a lot of people say this, and this is where Ethan is one of them, where he talks about, we don't want politics in comics. I say, screw that. That is not at all the case. I think that is a misunderstanding of the problem that originally happened. When a lot of people think of comic books, they think of Marvel and DC. Yes, indies are all around, and yes, there's tons of people, maybe yourself included, that say, well, I don't know, I barely read the big two. I'm all about indies. I don't think of that. Okay, yes. I'm not going to be speaking directly for everybody. But in general, a large group of people, when they think of comics, they just think of Marvel and DC. And the reason where Comicsgate started wasn't because Image Comics did some far radical left book. Comicsgate started because things like Marvel turning Captain America into a Nazi. Breaking up the marriage of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Turning characters, race swapping them, gender swapping them, having the feminist agenda all over. Characters wearing a shirt. Peter Parker slumming on the couch, as a deadbeat with his "ask me about my feminist agenda." The proselytization to you, the reader, with these established characters that we've known and loved for decades, that have been around for, with DC's case, it's getting close to a century. Superman had his 80th birthday just this year. So these characters are kind of sacred, and they're not owned by individual creators, right? These are things that the publishing company ultimately owns the license and the intellectual property, but it's kind of owned by the fandom. Without these publishing houses, if they don't write these characters to the fans' expectations, why even have the characters to begin with? This is a question I always ask myself when I go see a movie and it's an adaptation of something. For instance, I just saw Batman versus Superman for the first time. Yeah, I know. And the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, this is not Batman. Now, it was very cool Batman. There was very cool aspects. I think Ben Affleck makes a good Batman. But story-wise, how the narrative went, the character was completely out of character. It just didn't make sense to me. And I have to always ask myself, why do you do this as a publisher, or a media entity? You have something that makes money because it has a fan base. And fans pay to see more of that intellectual property or read more or whatever. And you decide, we're We're not going to give the fans what they want. They ordered chocolate ice cream with chocolate chips. We're going to give them vanilla ice cream with rainbow sprinkles. Why would you do that? Give the fans what they want. If you don't do that, you're going to lose money. And Batman vs. Superman lost a ton of money. Justice League lost a ton of money. You're seeing this ramifications in Star Wars with losing a ton of money because they're not giving the fans what they want. The fans own, essentially, in essence, the properties. So these things you need to keep consistent, right? You can't just all of a sudden interject politics in something that was never a political book. However, if you want to go on the indie scene and make a book about how Obama is the greatest superhero, the only superhero that the world's ever had, we just didn't know it. It's Obama. More power to you. I don't care. Go for it. I 100% believe that that's okay. I'm not going to buy it because I don't want to read it, but maybe someone else does, and happy for them to read it. There's two things. I'm not invested in that character. I don't have any partial, figurative ownership like I just discussed, like I do, say, of X-Men, which I spent hundreds and maybe thousands of dollars on. And you have a combined fan base that is a universal investment. I don't have that, right? I don't have this unspoken promise that this is what X-Men is about, what it's going to be about, and keep giving us your money and we'll keep giving you the goods. I don't have that with your independent book. Which is why you're never going to see me really rattle off about, like Chelsea Cain's Man-Eaters, which just looks so abysmal. Like, it's roast-worthy. Sure, it looks terrible, but I don't care that it exists. I'm perfectly happy because I don't have to buy it. It's not taking away from something I had. It's someone else's creation, and it's crystal clear about what it is to me. Right? It's not hidden. It's not bait and switch. It's not tricking me into anything. I'm perfectly okay. And if Timothy Lim wants to go make a book about Trump, good for him. Let him do it. What's wrong with that? Everyone can see the cover for what it is and go, it's not for me, and move on. Over 300 books come out every month. There's a huge selection. You can buy what you want. But what you don't do is you don't go, you know what? We're going to turn Iron Man, well, you know what? We're going to kill him. We'll turn him into an artificial intelligence, and then we'll replace him with this little black girl who's, of course, way smarter than he ever was because, little black girls are all about the science and they're just super smart. Like, no, that was an obvious political grab. The book was written terrible. Fans hated it. Marvel never should have done it. Now, if Marvel wanted to create a new original character and do whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the hijacking of what exists that's the problem. If Marvel says we're going to make a new imprint and it's going to be leftist political comics and we're going to call it, Epic Comics. They're going to bring it back like DC brought back Vertigo, and it's going to be, okay, you've labeled these books. This is why I don't have a problem with, by the way, I'll use this example. Vertigo. I have a zero problem with Vertigo because DC has made a separate imprint, said, hey, and we're going to make these books like Border Town, I think is what it's called. And it's going to be super far left, racist, radical, all this stuff. And I don't care because it's not part of the DC universe. So it's not shitting over something that I love and I have partial ownership on. It's off in a different area, a sub-brand, and I can avoid it. And people who like it, they can go buy it and let the free market decide. That's what Comicsgate is partially about. Okay, the other part, of course, being professionalism. So finally, just wrap this up. I want to talk about if you aren't anti-CG, then you are CG. You don't get to really decide if you're a Comicsgate or not. Okay, you can decide whether you want to wave the flag. That's 100% true. But if someone says you're Comicsgate, join the club. You know what? Because that's how it all started. The pros no one originally decided we're Comicsgate, and John Arrows can go and claim that he started us all, but no. The pros decided to call everyone Comicsgate as an insult, to libel them as Gamersgate all over again, as if that were some sort of insult. And you got to understand, like Nurkish, you're probably not listening to this, but you can say you're not Comicsgate, but to everyone who is anti-Comicsgate, all the pros, you are Comicsgate. So just because you deny it, it doesn't matter. Comicsgate is about being labeled. And so Nurkish, what Nurkish does is he doesn't wave the flag. He doesn't embrace it. But he's Comicsgate whether he likes it or not. Not because I said so, but because his enemies say so. And keep that in mind. Remember also that drama knows no allegiance. This all started, this whole video is because of the drama going back to the war campaign with John Delarose. And there's been drama before with Captain Cummings. And look, just because you're a Comicsgate, or just because maybe you're not a far leftist, whatever your reasons, know that drama is not allegiant to certain groups and factions and ideas. Humans in general are drama. And there's going to be drama all the time. It's whether or not you want to get sucked up into it, or even worse, if you want to magnify the drama. Just let it be. If someone gets dramatic, try some diplomacy. Try not throwing fire back. And just realize that people are people. Just because drama happens doesn't turn them into a bad person. Doesn't turn them into not Comicsgate. And for the left, it doesn't turn them into Comicsgate. Drama is universal. And focus on the basics of CG. When you're talking about CG, just focus. Hopefully, I encourage you, just those basic two things. You can have other things that you're into and want and personally aligned to, and that's 100% okay. But understand that due to we're all individuals, it's really not right to kind of get caught up into all this and make that part of Comicsgate as well, and form this collectivist idea that we all have to be, these things. If you focus on the basics, you're not going to disagree. If you focus on, hey, we don't want professionals sending pictures of their ass to us, everyone's going to agree on that. If you say, I don't want Captain America to be a Nazi, everyone's going to agree on that. If you say, I don't want Timothy Lim to be able to make Trump comic books, that's not, you see what I'm saying? Not everyone's going to agree. So separate that. You can have that opinion. I'm not saying don't have that opinion, but don't lump just because you align with Comicsgate doesn't mean everything you align with now is also Comicsgate. Yeah, that makes sense. So I just want to talk about that real quick, which wasn't really that quick, but if you got this far, thanks so much for listening. Hopefully Ethan's little avatar pic here got me a couple views. Maybe you got entertained by this chat that I just don't ever want to read. If you got bored of my voice, you could zone out and just read the comments here. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments about what I said, put them wherever, down somewhere in that area. Tweet me on Twitter, Ash1138. And I love to talk about this. I love ideas. I love the conversation. The reason for this video is just to be part of the conversation. As you can see, I have a lot to blab about, and I can't just fit this in a tweet. If you have a video, you want to make your own responses to me, that'd be great too. No one's ever done a response video to me. So this is my response. Not really to Ethan Van Sciver, but he's... Ethan, you're sure you're not going to listen to me, you're too busy. But if you were, you inspired this open letter type response of my thoughts to the world. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for you guys for watching. And I'll see you next time.